other. Us guys, people say, oh, that's all you ever do is think about sex. And it's not about that. It's a reflection of quality of life, and that drive for life, that drive and zest and excitement that, we want to pursue, not just a woman, but things in our life and accomplishments. It's a big to-do with the significant availability of these special peptides and hormones and signaling factors that keep our organs young. And as we age, all these things decline to the point where we just rather sit on a couch. I'll just say, when men have optimized hormones and testosterone levels, they're more of a gentleman. They have more confidence. It's the insecure men that will yell and scream and beat a woman because they can't get an erection. I've known men that committed suicide because they couldn't make love to a woman over time. And once they lost that ability, they said, well, what else is left? I have money, I have cars and this and that, but that's not what it's about. The newest discoveries from a Yale and a Harvard study suggesting that it's not just diet, not just exercise, and not just basically our state of mind, but the ability to make love. And if you think about it, the average couple after their honeymoon, let's hope it's a good match to begin with, they're at each other almost every day, hopefully. I mean, let's say at least 3 times a week, okay? And then as we age, it gets down to twice a week, then once a week, and then once a month. And they might as well just be roommates. And the truth is that loss of initially libido is a reflection of a decline in what we call free bioavailable testosterone. The drop in total testosterone is also a further reflection, and the loss of the ability to produce human growth hormone and growth factors and their associated amino acid related peptides. And we then look at something called PT141, which has been approved for female arousal disorder. So when women are not as orgasmic or have as much libido, then oxytocin has been shown to help.
Cures, Remedies, and Beyond podcast with Dr. Irina, a Stanford-trained medical doctor, inventor, and a published author with over 30 years of clinical experience, is bringing together the science of medicine and the art of healing for ultimate vitality and health. It engages in discussions with healthcare providers, wellness experts, innovators, philosophers, spiritual and industry leaders, as well as health and wisdom seekers to provide you, the listeners, with practical tips and knowledge to help optimize your health and well-being. The Cures, Remedies, and Beyond podcast with Dr. Irina.
Our topic today is men's health and anti-aging. The life expectancy of men in the United States is nearly 6 years shorter than that of women, who live on average 79 years, according to new research published in JAMA Internal Medicine last year. It has declined significantly over the past few years, falling from 78.5 5 years ago to 77 in 2020 and 76 in 2022. Many factors contribute to this decline, including chronic metabolic disease, mental health issues, and COVID deaths, among others. There is an ongoing public health crisis, despite so many advancements in treating illnesses and advanced diseases. And the consensus among healthcare providers is that we're not very good when it comes to preventive care. To discuss this important topic, we have invited one of the leading wellness advocates in the nation, Dr. Nick Delgado. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Delgado.
Great to be with you. I'm excited to share an incredible bit of information for men's health.
You are a very passionate wellness educator, Dr. Nick. You're also a prolific writer, and I know you have authored over 15 books, including Stop Aging Now, Blood Doesn't Lie, Mastering Life, Love, Sex, and Intimacy, which I actually have as well, and I see behind you a few of those books. So, you also have done research in biochemistry and endocrinology with a focus on the physiology of aging, and earned your Ph.D. in health science while doing a study in a wellness program provided at seminars with a well-known motivational speaker, Tony Robbins. But what impressed me the most, Nick, is that you're an incredible role model, not only in health and natural anti-aging, but also as a world strength endurance champion, setting a record twice, I understand, for the world strength endurance lifting in 1 hour. You definitely walk your talk, Nick. How many pounds were you able to lift in 1 hour?
The first world record I set was similar to kettlebells, but it's different because we take dumbbells and we stand and we curl the weight and then lift completely overhead, and then we alternate. The way I was able to break the record was I was mostly pressing them at the same time. So it was 25 pounds in each hand. That's 50 pounds being lifted overhead with each lift. And then after 40 minutes, when I broke the all-time world record, I pyramided up to heavier weight for those doubters that said, oh, I could have done it with 25. So I went up to 40-pound dumbbells in each hand. And during the last 20 minutes, I added another sizable amount of weight. I was training within 100 pounds of breaking the record, but I broke the world record by 10,000 pounds. So that world record for curl and press still stands to this day of all men or women who have attempted of any age, on steroids or not, and I still hold that record. And the second record I assaulted was the world record for curls. Stuart Burrell had taken 50 pounds and curled nonstop for 550 times. I curled 1,038 curls, doubling his record. Another gentleman came, and just right around January, December's the cutoff for the Guinness World Record books. So I was in the world record books, but not the Guinness, because another guy exceeded it by a few pounds. And instead of trying to break that record again, I decided to go represent Team USA in the World Championships in London, where we took on the strongest men from Dubai, Germany, UK, and really we were leading Team USA. And Dubai was scheduled to win against Ireland and all the other teams. And it ended up, we won by 5 lifts. And they were quite shocked that we were the team that won, since I was probably the oldest on stage, and my son at the time was only 14 years old, and he's 220 pounds and nearly 6 foot tall, and big Tim Nash. So we really hold 3 world championship records. And at this stage now, my new goal is to break the world record for healthy aging. I'm 69. I'll be 70 in January 5th.
Wow. You look great, and definitely younger than your passport age. So, well, do you feel as good as you look? And what advice can you give our audience, especially men, to stop aging? What are your secrets, Nick?
I feel incredible. I feel, and by the way, I'm always using different interventions and protocols. And because I've had the opportunity to utilize from functional medicine, lifestyle medicine, anti-aging medicine, and rejuvenative medicine, I believe the person who will set the world record for longevity, not just living the most number of years on the planet, but with quality years, where, you know, one is completely functional, capable, both sexually, both physically, both mentally, all across the board. Because to me, when I ask audiences how many here want to live past 100, a few hands go up, and it's kind of strange to me. And I finally said, well, why isn't everyone raising your hand? And their perception of reaching age 90 or 100 is being in a wheelchair and drooling and just being out of it, right? And so I can appreciate that, because we've all worked with senior care, and if not, at least had a relative or a grandparent or so that's been quite aged, and either their cognition is gone, their physicality is gone, their sense of humor, their wit. But the longest lived cultures in the world, we call them the blue zones, they have a sense of purpose. They keep love and community. Many of them are past the age of 100. They do follow very much more whole, natural, fresh food type diet, not junk processed made food that you drive through and get. They also are very physically active, and they keep themselves kind of emotionally stimulated. They take on new jobs, things that they have a sense of purpose about. They play cards together. They enjoy each other's company. I think there are some really legitimate pathways, but what they're missing is what we talk about, the Russians, some of the Australians understood about peptides, some of the advanced work with bioidentical hormones, that most of these long-lived cultures, virtually none of them have utilized new technologies that I believe can make a tremendous difference. And there is a subgroup in, I believe, the New York area. They're an Asian community that's been living more of a kind of a homegrown Asian culture type healthy. And I believe the Asian diet is close to the healthiest, not the Mediterranean, not even close. The Asian diet is far better. And you look at Okinawa, you look at Japan, the longest lived people are not in the Mediterranean area. They're in the Asian areas. But let me just also preface that. These particular people are wealthy enough, they can afford to hire anti-aging doctors, functional medicine doctors, and regenerative medicine doctors, and then they're undergoing stem cells, peptides, bioidentical hormones. They're using natural anti-inflammatories instead of taking NSAIDs and drugs and chemotherapy and radiation. They're, instead of doing surgeries every time they have an achy joint, they're just going, I believe, what the future of healthcare and medicine should be. I don't know if it'll ever happen because there's very powerful industries that don't want this to happen. Not because they don't want people to live longer, but they want to corner the market on the financial grid of medical care, which is out of control, right? The U.S. has amongst the highest cost of healthcare, and yet we have amongst the sickest population in the world.
That's so true, unfortunately. Yeah. And you mentioned bioidentical hormones, and I read actually in some of your materials that you actually brought up an interesting point that presumably in ancient China, they have used the prototypes of bioidentical hormones since 3000 BC using young people's urine, which is, of course, how we excrete our natural hormones. Can you elaborate on that? That really, was incredible.
Yeah, there's a textbook that was pointed out to me by Dr. Jonathan Wright and Dr. Terry Hertog. And when I read through the book, I was quite intrigued because, when you say 3000 BC, add 2000 to 2024 years. So that's 5,000 years ago. Imagine that they had the intelligence and recognized that when a young 22-year-old female, in the case when they would urinate hundreds of hormones. And I'm not sure, they never described how. They probably mix it in some kind of a paste because transdermal bioidentical hormones, sometimes they're delivered obviously via the skin, right? So I suspect in the young 20-year-old men, they did the similar thing with some kind of a paste or cream and rubbed it into the old men, the 89-year-olds, and the old women, I'll use that word old. Now that I'm approaching 70, I no longer call 70-year-olds old. But I remember when I heard my dad was 45 years old, I said, oh my gosh, that is so old.
I think we all can relate to that, exactly.
Right. So I think that this is not something new. People think, oh, hormones are so new, we don't know enough about it. There's 250,000 medical journal references about human growth hormone, about growth factors. There's more and more on a regular basis. What's really limited is because Big Pharma wants to prove that their synthetic hormones work, there's probably a little bit more work in that area, but then those particular hormones reportedly have side effects. It's the bioidentical natural, particularly at physiologic, what I call, if you were to shoot at when a person is at their best at age 20, 22, if those hormone levels are optimized to that level, not to that of a 70, 80, or 90-year-old where you're declining rapidly, then you're going to see some good results, and not where you go to the Rock Johnson and, Dwayne Johnson, the Rock, and he's have these super physiologic, not even physiologic. They're these guys are using, and some of them will admit, some won't. I was watching Arnold's documentary last night. I get to go backstage with Arnold at the Arnold Classic, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and interview different athletes and individuals. And he said it openly on his documentary. Yeah, we use steroids in our day. And he just kind of commented, well, it accounted for maybe 10% of his advancement. And maybe they used them only 6 months out of the year. And then they went off them coming up towards contest. That's not what I hear about particularly current bodybuilders. And whether they did that or not, when you really quiz, according to another podcaster associate of mine, he said when they act and ask deep, and I believe it's the gentleman named Derek, more plates, more dates. And he said that the guys he interviewed behind closed doors, not on a microphone, but they admitted they're using huge daily dosages. not 100, 200 milligrams a week like a lot of doctors will replace with injectable, which I disagree with too, because it should be done a daily dose if you're going to inject. But I'm a fan of pellets myself. But let's just say these athletes, these movie stars, some of them are using crazy dosages, and I think unsafe.
Yeah. So I know that you're a big proponent of the natural, pro-growth hormone substances, so that might actually have similar effects. So, but avoiding, of course, side effects of the actual, especially big dosages of growth hormones. So, and I know you mentioned in the past that specific substances like molecular hydrogen and things like that. So.
Yeah, I feel like ever since I was maybe 12 years old in my garage and I bought a chemistry set and I was experimenting and nearly blew up the house. And, I just always had a fascination. I remember when I came from Temple City, California, and I kind of lived in El Monte on the border. So I would drive to the University of Southern California every day or take the bus. And I just remember that I had this huge fascination with biology. It was just something that I enjoyed. When I travel, I would look for monkeys. I loved insects. If you think about the whole story of the Kinsey report, Alfred Kinsey, he was literally an entomologist, which just studies insects, and it's the most boring thing in the world. And when I talked to the professor, he said, well, you're end up going to be learning how to kill insects. Do you really want to do that? And I said, no, not really. So I went further, and I ended up scoring #1 at USC out of 1,500 students in biology. I'm not bragging about it, but it was a bell curve. And I remember, all these students from Beverly Hills High and San Marino High, very wealthy areas. And I thought, how come they know so much, so far ahead of what I was taught in my, basically non-private school, just a public school. And I just, instead of going out partying in college, I was studying every day. And I knew to study with the smartest. I'd find who the smartest people were and then do brain dumps, right? And then I just discovered, and I shared this with my 15-year-old who's getting straight A's now, by the way, and he was on the autistic spectrum. So when he was first born, he was kind of in an inaudible class, and I really nurtured and followed and guided him because I've helped other autistic children as well to recover. And then he integrated in regular school, and now he's planning his freshman year next year to start college classes while he's in high school. He's in film school at Newport Harbor, which has a fabulous school. Even though it's a public school, they have so much money in Newport Beach, right? And so the family support that. But I'm just enthusiastic because I believe that all of my early pioneering work on health and fitness and studying about the quality and the necessity of sleep and detoxification and exercise, but then it kind of laid that foundation. Because I had a stroke when I was 21 years old, being on a basic American diet. And so, to have recovered from that, I then sought a mentor that I figured whatever I'm learning in textbooks is maybe not the full story. And when I heard the Nathan Pritikin lecture and in Pasadena, California, and that was 1978. So he in a 6-hour seminar literally revealed everything in a book I'd read by him called Live Longer Now. And I was just astonished because he literally had basically the answers to diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure. He was dabbling around with cancer. He hadn't quite got that completely figured out. And I became his understudy. I got a chance. I met him after the lecture, and he invited me to come work with him at the Pritikin Longevity Center. And I did for, I think, a little over 3 years, and became the director of the entire outpatient program. I was the youngest director in the history of their company at age 22, 23, after I'd had my stroke. But then I got really serious. And when I showed him my before-after pictures of just following what he taught in his book, and it ended up on 60 Minutes, and everyone was talking about my 3 patients, these patients who had heart disease and reverse heart disease, that I was just so excited that instead of just people dying of what we thought was a heart attack, a natural cause of death, or cancer, diabetes, these are not just diseases of aging. They are diseases that are inflicted by inappropriate lifestyle measures, right? And so that brings us back full circle, that what do you need to do to take our listeners to also, if they want to live a healthy life to 90, 100 and above, what do they need to do? And what do they need to do right away? Why wait preventive medicine is where it's at. Don't wait till you're on your deathbed, right?
Exactly. Well, yeah, like what are your recommendations would be, for, let's say, men who want still maintain very healthy muscle mass, right? So, which is one of the biggest issues, of course, in aging male population. So, sarcopenia, obviously. So, would you share anything, especially like, I know you like utilizing, natural herbs or some other healthier ways of maintaining muscle mass?
I'm glad you bring up sarcopenia or loss of muscle mass as we age, because we all face that challenge. And another giveaway for men's health, and of course, women can associate with loss of muscle mass and kind of gaining more body fat as they age. But a thing that they may not fully associate with is male erections. And this is another indicator of longevity. The frequency, and during our sleep, it's natural for the male organ to inflate and engorge and then deflate. And it's happens at least 10 times a night. But as we age, there's devices and ways to measure, if this normal natural process is occurring like it does when we're 15 to 18 to 20 years old, is that, when we reach 30, 40, 50, 60, invariably, it goes down to almost zero. So this loss of the ability of intimate function, and if we then correlate with the blue zones discussion that the newest discoveries from a Yale and a Harvard study suggesting that it's not just diet, not just exercise, and not just basically our state of mind, but the ability to make love. And if you think about it, the average couple after their honeymoon, let's hope it's a good match to begin with, they're at each other almost every day, hopefully. I mean, let's say at least 3 times a week, okay? And then as we age, it gets down to twice a week, then once a week, and then once a month. They might as well just be roommates. And the truth is that loss of initially libido is a reflection of a decline in what we call free bioavailable testosterone. The drop in total testosterone is also a further reflection, and the loss of the ability to produce human growth hormone and growth factors and their associated amino acid related peptides. And we then look at something called PT141, which has been approved for female arousal disorder. So when women are not as orgasmic or have as much libido, then oxytocin has been shown to help. PT141, which is a subgroup of MSM, Mammalian stimulating hormone, MSH, and
is it part of the peptides?
Yes.
Yes.
MSH, when you take it, you feel extraordinary, and there's this delay of nearly like 4 hours. And when it kicks in, it doesn't affect the PD5, the enzyme that interferes with nitric oxide for male engorgement, which is where the famous blue pill came from, because the blue pill does not restore nitric oxide. What it does is it stops that enzyme from gobbling up nitric oxide and preventing a man from reaching full-blown, engorgement. And a woman to achieve fantastic pleasure has to have enough blood engorgement and oxygen in that area. And if they don't in the female pelvic region, it's also a reflection that they're low in nitric oxide, they're low in the growth factors, and in particular, this rather surprising MSH hormone. The problem is MSH, when you take it, I'll never forget, I went to my chiropractor's office because I train every day. I like to get to bed early and sleep for about 4 hours. And then I go train in the middle of the night out at the beach, at the ocean, looking up at the moon. It's just a spectacular time for me to listen to incredible music and look at the stars and just dream and lift, right? And while I'm doing so, I'm in this almost nirvana type incredible feeling that I'm experiencing. And I just remember my chiropractor's open past 12 midnight. I mean, it was crazy. I would drive to his office. He'd work on me, and kind of get my body ready for the next workout or competition. And I just think back about it, but this arousal disorder has something to do. And he said, "Come over here, Dr. Nick, look in the mirror." And I'm like, "Why are you asking me to come look in the mirror?" I look in the mirror at myself, and he says, "Look." I said, I see. And he goes, "No, you're a black man. You've gotten too dark. MSH is a very darkening peptide. And he didn't know I was taking MSH, but I knew I was. And I'm like, oh, okay. I kind of changed races for a moment. And I didn't mind, but I was really dark black, like dark black Indian slash, black, Africa. And so then PT 141 came out, which was the extract of MSH. So it doesn't get you as dark. So if I look a little tan, I'll never forget another anti-aging expert colleague. If I use his name, you would know who he is immediately. But he always talks about the TA65. He's a very Scripps Institute, really great lecturer. I love all my colleagues. I lecture alongside all of them because I used to travel around the world and lecture. Now after COVID, I'm coming back and submitting my abstract to start speaking at doctors' conferences again. But the point was, he showed up one day and I told him about this, and he was tan as heck. It was funny. Okay, I know what you're using.
Yeah.
And he's able to keep up with his significant other. Us guys, people say, oh, that's all you ever do is think about sex. And it's not about that. It's a reflection of quality of life, and that drive for life, that drive and zest and excitement that, we want to pursue, not just a woman, but things in our life and accomplishments. It's a big to-do with the significant availability of these special peptides and hormones and signaling factors that keep our organs young. And as we age, all these things decline to the point where we just rather sit on a couch. I'll never forget one year I just stopped taking everything because I was going to be on a TV show with Suzanne Summers, and she wanted to know, how do these herbs, these supplements, this lifestyle, how does it affect your life? And people would say, well, you're just genetically enhanced. It's already in your blood, right? I said, no. And I went off for a year. I'll never do it again, but I did. And I declined so miserably. I now know what it's like to be a couch potato and sit there and not want to do anything and just eat potato chips and bliss out on TV and drink beer, right? I mean, I'm not that type of guy. And so when it happened, I thought, God, now I know how most guys my age feel, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. But the guys I work with, they feel like I feel like. They understand, oh man, I would never allow myself to go and age to that degree. And I remember reading an article by a female author, and she goes, I never understood men, never quite understood them. And then I took testosterone injections, and all of a sudden I got it. Oh my gosh, you're constantly drive for libido. You look at a tree and it has a split in it, and you're looking at it like, you want to hump the tree. You're not only just constantly thinking about, making love and intimacy and things, your mind's sharp, you're quick, if someone is the aggressor, you'll challenge them back. You won't just lay back and roll over, and there's a lot more. I'll just say, when men have optimized hormones and testosterone levels, they're more of a gentleman. They have more confidence. It's the insecure men that will yell and scream and beat a woman because they can't get an erection. I've known men that committed suicide because they couldn't make love to a woman over time. And once they lost that ability, they said, well, what else is left? I have money, I have cars and this and that, but that's not what it's about, So your mental state is affected by supporting these natural youthful hormone. And I found herbs. I found a Grow Young spray that's an oral delivered growth factors that AKA is similar to human growth hormone. And we know these work because when these levels are measured in the body, people get deeper sleep, and deeper sleep means you're going to produce your hormone levels more effectively. Nighttime erections return, morning erections return, being able to make love again. The muscle density starts coming back. So all of these things, your skin improves. You can do this test where you pull your skin up, and if it just sits up there for a long time, your skin, the elasticity, the collagen, it's all declining. You need human growth hormone. You need multiple growth factors. I have probably used somewhere in excess of 50 different peptides over the several decades. I was using them and experimenting with them, before people even talked about them, because I figured that was one way I would beat aging. That would be one way I would extend the quality and length of my life and be able to make love to my significant other, continue research on my Mastering Love, Sex, and Intimacy book that John Gray endorsed as one of the best books for making love in the bedroom.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. Well, of course, yeah. I mean, it gives you the testosterone and feeling good gives you like that zest for life. And talking about peptides, I know that Russian scientists have been studying it since late 50s, early
Right.
60s, right? So,
Yeah.
and they had secret laboratories where their astronauts or cosmonauts, as they call them, have been obviously the early guinea pigs, so yeah, that's interesting that you've been tapping into that. So, and any other specific recommendations you would have by any chance for muscle mass, again, to
Absolutely.
reverse or combat sarcopenia?
Absolutely. See, I think people have a really poor perception as they age. They should slow down, not work out as hard, be careful in the gym. Just they have all these misconceptions. The truth is, it's really appropriate and imperative that when I hear people, the number one excuse for why they don't work out on a regular basis is, I don't have enough time. So if time is a factor, I started looking at this myself because, I'm an entrepreneur. I travel. I have 5 children, 4 grandchildren. I'm single. I date. I have commitments up to the next year, bookings on podcasts and events and things. So, and I love to go to the beach. I love to work out at the beach. There's something about that. I have a gym in my backyard that I've brought in NFL players, Olympians, and others to go through my 12-minute workout. And that was a thing. Wow. I discovered when I studied the work of Arthur Jones, Mike Menser, heavy duty training, Dorian Yates, which is an English bodybuilder who won, I think it was 4 Mr. Olympiads, and only because of a muscle tear, he backed out of training. But they had perfected a system of very rapid, intense training. And the word intense shouldn't scare you. It just simply means that our body is designed in a very unique way. And that is when we're able to curl a weight, that's the concentric or shortening contraction, but we're 40% stronger on the lengthening contraction. So it's not the tricep that pulls the arm back down, it's the bicep that's lengthening, that's letting the weight down. So when you're walking downstairs, it's the opposing, it's the same muscle group that's lengthening and letting the leg down toward, the next step. So
while contracting, and we call it eccentric, right? So, and yeah, it's actually safer because you have less injuries when you use that eccentric type of exercise. I'm impressed you even know,
Yeah, and it's interesting.
All this science of exercise physiology.
They would invert the treadmill. So people who had difficulty walking, they would have them hold on the rail and have a little strap behind them, but they would walk downward because it was easier for them to build up the eccentric muscle contraction, because we know, again, we're 40% stronger in that eccentric level. And they started building muscle mass and strength, and then they could walk flat. Then they could walk up the treadmill and then up the hill, and functionally they could get up from sitting. One of the signs of not being able to live that much longer is you're on the ground and you can't get up off the ground. So some people get so weak and lost so much muscle density. So, again, I'm looking at these things and I'm thinking, okay, everyone's talking about certain supplements that build muscle. And I've looked at them, and it's kind of humorous to me. And I know there's a big trend with creatine and these different things. And the first thing I always ask is it a dairy-based product? I always say no way to way. If it's a dairy-based program or protein, I would not touch it with a 10-foot pole, namely because not that dairy product doesn't have amino acids, it's just that it's from another animal, and it's highly, I won't use the word allergic, the food compatibility of that protein is not something that our human body's designed to handle. Our body's designed to handle human breast milk for the first 2 years. In some primitive cultures, babies are nursed for 4 years. And then after that, they're weaned and they never drink milk again. But Henry Ford in his 80s, a little known fact, was using a wet nurse to get the growth factors, the hormones, the stem cells from human breast milk. I've used human breast milk extensively, and I think it's an incredible way to build the immune system. There's even fiber in human breast milk. It's hard to imagine this, but cow's milk has none of this. Cow's milk is excessive in certain, and I'll just say toxic byproducts. People say, well, oh, you're getting human milk, you're going to get microbes. You know what? Our body's got more bacteria than human cells. Our body has more viruses than human cells. It's how our immune system works with probiotics, postbiotics, and prebiotics. So I'm a big fan of restoring the gut health from a functional medicine standpoint, using kimchi and sauerkraut and some of the international discoveries of other nations, and yogurt. But I don't use dairy yogurt. I use coconut yogurt. And then I use sprouts. I sprout my nuts and seeds. I soak them overnight, and I use flaxseed and chia to get my omegas in the morning, and I mix it in with coconut yogurt. So I'm starting out with this incredible rich omega rich whole food. I don't use olive oil. I don't use any kind of oils in my cooking. I haven't for 45 years. I'll rub oil on my skin, and the skin will absorb to the dermis, and that's safe and healthy for reducing wrinkles and so forth. And I just love the idea of helping people, even with NADIV and Myers cocktail and nutrition. And I use the microscope as biofeedback to see if what I'm doing, is it really working? Is it making a difference? And then I looked at estrogen dominance. And when Dr. Mark Rosenthal from Florida, and his mother had died of breast cancer, and he did a deep dive into cancer, and he said that virtually every cancer has some estrogen toxin relationship. So it not just comes from plastic bottles and fire retardant in the bedding at hotels. It actually comes 10 to the 6 more, comes a million times more concentration from the consumption of all things, dairy product, more estrone sulfate. A Harvard study showed 33 times more dangerous estrogen sulfate, equal to a woman who's menstruating or taking birth control pills. So estrogens are loaded in chicken, in fish, fish only because of PCBs and the chemicals that are dumped in the ocean, and beef because it does have menstrual cycles. Even if they're organically grown, they're loaded with estrogen toxins. So some guys will eat meat and beef and they'll go, oh, real man eats beef. Well, they marble their muscle density because they get more fat, because even if it's lean meat, they're still not getting what Lee Haney once said, and that is that plant-based complex carbohydrates have a protein sparing effect. So when you eat the protein within the food, it's used to build the body, to repair the organs, all the functions of the body that need protein, and the rest is the carbohydrate, the complex carbohydrates. They're being burned for calories with zero waste product. Only water is excreted and carbon dioxide is exhaled. Where if you depend on protein, as most Americans think they need more and more grams of protein as they get older, they're loading their body with ammonia, with various toxins, and protein burns with 33% more waste product, whereas carbohydrates burn with zero waste product. I don't mean simple carbohydrates. I'm talking plant-based, vegetables, fruits, soup, salads. So you eat these foods, and beans at the end of that, and nut seeds, and these things combined are, I think, amazing. So sarcopenia requires high-intensity training. About 2 or 3 times a week, I do the 12-minute workout. So less than an hour of training a week. Then I do flow training, where I take any kind of movement and I do it for about an hour, lifting weights for an hour, nonstop, without setting the weights down, moving to different movements. And then I'm at about 45% of my target heart rate, where I could carry on a conversation while I'm lifting. I'm listening to music. I'm at the beach. I'm having a good time watching beautiful girls walk by. I'm enthused and just having a great time. And then I go to yoga, and I don't like to do yoga on my own, but I will do some stretching on my own mats. But I like to go in a class where it's a little bit structured, and I see beautiful women and guys, and we're all feeling good. And then I'll go to some HIIT classes once in a while. But HIIT is a lot of stopping and breaking and things. I don't believe in that. As you get older, you need to have good cardio, good strength, and exercise will burn fat if you build muscle. And building muscle requires running. It requires high intensity, meaning the exercise is taken to that limit where you're really breathing heavy and you're pushing, where I'll do 8 to maybe 25 repetitions per exercise and go to the next. And in 12 minutes, most of my clients are done. And then I optimize their testosterone, their DHEA, and more importantly, which everyone forgets, is the adrenal, because the adrenal glands can produce enough adrenaline to even to the moment you die. What we can't produce is cortisol. We have cortisol deficiencies, and that's a subgroup of Addison's disease. Like John F. Kennedy had Addison's disease, and without giving him hydrocortisone, he wouldn't have been president. He wouldn't be able to have handle the stress. Even President Trump was, when he was in the hospital at Walter Reed, they gave him dexamethasone, which is a corticosteroid prednisone, but I don't like using those harsh, very concentrated, because they linger in the body too long and they have side effects. But bioidentical natural cortisol in the book, Our Bodies Are Safe Uses of Cortisol by William McKinley Jeffries, has shown that cortisol is life-saving, and it combats flu and that thing that shut down the whole world. I mean, it's so important that you understand adrenal, catabolic, and anabolic. When you balance and you're building up the body muscle-wise, you also have to have the catabolic that pushes the amino acids, fatty acids, and glucose into the cells for energy and for repair. And then you have to have the balance of over 38 different hormones, which I look in 24 urine, and I figure out, how does this all work together?
Wow, that is really sounds like a good lifestyle, medicine and overall wonderful program. We're going to take a short break and we will be right back with Dr. Nick Delgado.
This podcast represents the personal views and opinions of the host and the guests and does not constitute medical advice. The statements contained in this podcast have not been evaluated by the FDA. Any products or treatments mentioned are not intended to diagnose, treat, or prevent any disease. And now your host, Dr. Irina.
Nick, I also know that you're a big proponent of the mindset. And of course, it is very important, to have a, healthy mindset, to work on reversing your aging and in general have a better outlook to life. So what kind of training do you usually recommend people? Because I know you have very unique programs that you put people through.
Well, I believe that the most important key to longevity is compliance and consistency. The problem is people will make excuses. They'll make a New Year's resolution. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to, the list goes on, right? But 5 days to 1 month later, they're not doing it anymore. Why? And that's because basically either their priority or their values isn't really correctly aligned, but more importantly, they don't understand the operations of the subconscious mind. So what I did was I thought, look, if I'm going to be a world champion, break world records, write 15 books, motivate and guide people, and I'm kind of like the doctor's doctor. Doctors who are doctors like to come to me because they know I know the science. But more importantly, like you said in the beginning of the show, I'm one of the few that really walks my talk. I do all of these things. And if I find there's any issue that we need to back down and use safer dosages or maybe use peptides of certain types like Semirel and GHR2 instead of the 6, which stimulates appetite, maybe use it twice a week instead of every day. There's different protocols I keep discovering that seem to be consistent to do appropriately over time. However, the most important thing was I found that most of us are driven by what's called the 5 negative emotions. There's anger, there's fear, sadness, guilt, and worry, or essentially the concern about the future. So when you learn in what's called timeline therapy, Dr. Tad James, who had worked with Dr. Richard Bandler, who was actually instrumental in Tony Robbins' transformation to learn how to direct big audiences and himself and accomplish goals. And he doesn't always show you how he does it to you. What I like in our programs is I show you step by step how to use simple scripts, how to read them, how to do what's called bypassing critical thinking. So see, it turns out, I don't know if you're a fan of affirmations, right? You've heard of affirmations, right?
Of course, yeah.
People will stand in front of the mirror and they'll read and like, I'm in great shape. I'm wealthy. And your mind's going, that's not true.
No, I'm not.
That's true. And so
I'm just lying to myself, trying to overcome
And some people say, well, if you just repeat it 20 times a day, it'll eventually become true. No, because your mind is searching for, it's like almost a Google search engine. If you put in AI the right questions, it'll search better. It'll get to the right answer. So you have to word it like this. You have to say, in a theta state, which is, by the way, instead of alpha agitated or beta state, you're in a very relaxed, like when you first wake up in the morning and when you're just about getting ready to go to bed at night. Or you can do it in the middle of the day if you just use a simple countdown process where you count backwards. And you should count backwards because then you get into your conscious mind and you access your subconscious mind. You go 5, I'm relaxed. 4, I'm relaxing the muscles of my body. 3, I'm 100 times more relaxed than I was before. 2, 1, I'm 1,000% relaxed. Now, 1, I'm relaxing my mind. 2, I'm 100 times relaxed. 3, and you just go through that process, relax the body and the mind. And now, as you breathe with each breath, you take a moment to see yourself moving into the future and accomplishing a certain goal that's before been challenging, such as weight loss. Weight loss is not an overnight process. It took you 9 months to bring a baby into the world. It took you maybe 2 years to get real heavy, maybe 5 years to get real heavy. Some people I've heard of getting weight because they have like more fat cells than people genetically have less fat cells. And when they eat the same amount of food, or their hormone levels, they have more estrogen in their body, or they're eating more meat that puts more estrogen into their system. And estrogen is a hormone that retains fat, right? And so if they're not exercising consistently, not eating correctly, all of these things start going on. So what you have to do is to bypass the critical thinking is, I'm en route to doing my daily 12-minute exercise, which is time enough for me to get a full workout on all muscle groups. You just have to watch one of Dr. Nick's videotapes on his online courses. And you basically say, I'm attracting the right people to my life that live this kind of lifestyle. So if you're not part of the community, you come on our Wednesday classes tonight. Today's Wednesday. Every Wednesday I broadcast after this show. And I have a community around the world, and we guide, and we have guest speakers, and we talk about these topics. But also then you say, look, I'm en route to selecting the right foods, preparing my foods properly. And when I see a fast food restaurant, if I happen to, and it's the only thing open, then I'll order a side of rice and beans, more of the complex carbohydrates, right? Or I'll order some fresh food as much as possible. And yet people think a salad is healthy, but salads are loaded with fatty salad dressings, the blue cheese, the Thousand Island, all the oils. You look at grams of fat. They are loaded with peppercina, meats and cheeses. Salads are fattening, at least the way we eat them. I made the most amazing salad today. I kind of love cooking. I have 2 cookbooks I made that anyone can order. It's called Simply Healthy Cookbook. And my other book that Tony Robbins loved, which is called How to Look Great and Feel Sexy in 9 Days. And it has 600 recipes that I collected from around the world. And I explained, and I just put together this combination for the salad. I had 3 people, and I didn't even ask them. They just told me, oh my gosh, this is so good. And it's filling and it's satisfying. So one of the secrets to weight loss is fill up on large vegetable salads because they're very low in calories, and fill up on fruit. Fruit is a medium calorie food. People, oh, wait, fruit tastes sweet. I'm going to get fat. No, watermelon, cantaloupe, all these things fill you up and satisfy, and they're rich in water. And then you transition if you're still hungry. You have maybe some mushrooms, which are incredibly low in calories, various vegetables. I made a spaghetti squash today with a fat-free dressing instead of pasta, which is kind of concentrated grain and it could be have gluten in it. I'm more of a plant-based person that minimizes the excess. I use more of the ancient grains like the rices and basmati brown rice and things instead of the bread, the gluten, and that type of stuff. And and then I have a crock pot with beans cooking every day without oil. And I put different spices and rosemary and thyme, and the whole house has this aroma with garlic, and people walk in, can I have some? I'm like, sure.
I love it.
So eating can be healthy, but here's a secret. For 45 years, I believe in quick food prep. I kind of learned this from the bodybuilding community where they wouldn't go anywhere without their little bag of food, but they always had protein bars and meat and chicken, breast and wrong things. I have glass containers filled with this marvelous salad that I, had my gal help me to chop up and prepare, and soups without oil. I have a tomato basil soup that I had today. And then I have spaghetti squash that cooked really quick in the air fryer. Everything I cook is without oils, but I'll use and get essential fatty acids from flaxseed, chia, avocado, coconut, all these foods. So I'm getting all the essential fatty acids, all the fiber, because the goal is to get 100 grams of fiber a day. The average American barely gets maybe 5 grams of fiber. Maybe 10 if they throw in a tomato and a little less in their hamburger. I mean,
right.
And
fiber, of course, is crucial, right? So not only for your GI microflora, but so it actually can also help to decrease the estrogen load, right? So unopposed estrogen in your body as well. So just with fiber alone.
So I've created scripts that are soon going to be on BrainTap, and then I have it on my own website. People download these scripts, and there's a script on healthy eating. There's another script on the 3 forms of exercise that will help you to get in fabulous shape. It combines like yoga, flow training, non-step lifting at a light weight, and then that high intensity 12-minute workout. And then there's another section on success and achieving financial rewards and dealing and letting go of negative people in your life. So there's about 14 scripts that I'm publishing. And people, my earlier book, Mastering the Powers of Your Inner Health, was a series of questions, because questions are great. It opens up the mind to searching for the answer, but the right questions is the key. And that's where I believe mindset helps with addictions. How is this serving me to drink beer or vodka or smoke or take meth and cocaine? We're probably the most addicted nation in the history of the planet. And partly because we've included it, we've made it okay to go to bars and ball games, and everyone's selling and buying alcohol, and they just sell, well, take an Uber home, or and then they get drunk driving and they kill someone. I mean, I think it's the 5th leading cause of death is accidents after Thanksgiving and Christmas due to alcohol related incidences, and depression, and then eating a heavy meal. On Thanksgiving, I eat all the side dishes, the sweet potatoes, the green beans prepared without oil, mashed potatoes, the cranberry, the stuffing with some ancient grain. And if I did eat a little bit of meat, it's no big deal. They're eating, that's the main thing, right? And so I just think there's a way to look through the power of the mind, let go of negative emotions. Most people are overwhelmed with anger, hurt, fear, guilt, and these things, jealousy, have built up over the years, and people lock them into the subconscious as their way of protecting themselves when someone kind of verbally or physically abuses them. And when you learn to let go of these emotions, which can be done in a few sessions with some of my therapists, they do Zoom with you, and we go through what's called timeline therapy. And I even have an incredible class coming up called foreveryoungevent.com, July 13th, a Saturday, and people can stream in for actually it's going to be from 11 in the morning to 4 p.m. Pacific. So that's a 5-hour event. And I have people like Phyllis Ginsburg and other practitioners going to be coming in to kind of guide and motivate people, and doctors on hormones and anti-aging. And so I believe you can immerse someone in one day, 5 hours, and get them really going in the right direction. Then they can pick and choose. So the power of the mind is everything. Once you master that, and you read these scripts about 6 minutes in the morning, 6 at night, and it stays in your mind, and each week, then after a while, you start letting go of addictions. You start letting go of harmful habits, and you start embracing healthy, good habits.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I understand that you do not drink alcohol.
In my lifetime, the summer of '69, at 12 years old, my dad owned a beer bar, and I drank every day to oblivion. And when the girls would come by, I'd invite them in. I'd smoke cigarettes, cartons of cigarettes. And somehow my dad was a functional alcoholic, having owned a beer bar and driving truck all night, and then going to the bar every day. I never really got to see him. And I thought, I'm going to be just like him if I keep doing this. And my brother did. He kept drinking, and it got him in trouble. And then he started, doing some other chemical substances that got him in trouble. And I personally, after that summer of '69, at 12 years old, decided to never smoke or drink again. So when I go to gatherings, I'll have orange juice. Even at medical conferences, they're serving alcohol at the cocktail hour. I'm ordering orange juice, and people come and offer me a drink. I said, I already got my drink.
I like that. I mean, we know alcohol is a major neurotoxin. People just don't kind of think about it. That definitely affects your liver and your peripheral nerves a great deal. So, yeah.
People say they drink wine every day to relax themselves. That's bullshit. I'm sorry, but the French have the highest rate of cirrhosis of the liver in the world. They don't drink to intoxication. They have a horrible problem with fatty liver, and it's alcohol related. And the country is aware of this, and they're working on educating people. Just eat the grapes. The vines grow beautiful grapes. I like to take grapes. It's funny, green, red grapes, different grapes, and put them in the freezer and freeze them. And you'd be surprised. You pop in your mouth and they taste something about freezing. It's not even like an ice cream. It's just this incredible taste. And I'm like, I just love them.
That's a good idea, yeah. And you have mentioned a few times oil-free cooking. So tell us more about the oils. I mean, there is more and more, of course, research shows that even poorly unsaturated fatty acids sometimes not necessarily good for you. So can you enlighten us a little bit more why you doing the no oil diet?
Yeah. I mean, I know Stephen Gundry's out there touting the benefits of olive oil, but if you watch his infomercial very closely, which is a sales ad for his product he's selling that has olive oil capsules, and he'll say that a very small amount of olive oil, equal to the amount in a capsule, is really, if you were to take it orally, all you need. I would even go further to say it's enough to get the essential fatty acids from the whole original olive, rather than extracting it out of the olive. Just like you don't want to be eating sugar extracted out of beets. Beets are good for you. You can eat 10 beets a day and be incredibly healthy. It's a root vegetable, but the sugar they pull out of it, out of the sugar cane or out of the beet, is toxic. I mean, the body will handle it, but it's too much of a good thing. Just like the oil, it's not so much that it's polyunsaturated or saturate or monounsaturated. It's really that oil is mechanically sticky. And I've seen this repetitively under a microscope. And a good case in point, Indian people, there's many, if you will, vegetarian Indian people, vegan, and they use oil and the food is just swimming in oil. And even healthy vegetables like eggplant and garbanzo beans and lentils, and there's so much oil, when you eat it, the oil, and people don't realize this, but the oil is kind of like taking a straight shot of sugar. The oil goes right into the general circulation, first gumming up the entire lymphatics through the lymphatic duct, and then it pours into the general circulation. There's this classic example of me where I eat very healthy on a daily basis, and I encourage people not to do fasting blood tests, but to eat and then see what your levels are, and do what's called postprandial testing to see where your triglycerides go to, your glucose, and your essential overall lipid profile. Because the truth is that I walk around eating healthy, exercising, and keeping my levels. I eat big portions, but big portions of kind of oil-free, sugar-free whole food. So I get filled up fairly easily, right? And the fiber slows the absorption of the oils and the fats and the sugars and things. But when you don't and extract out the fiber, that oil goes right directly into the general blood, and it coats the blood cells. And the head of a pin, there's 8 million red blood cells can fit at the head of a pin. So even droplets of oil that's in your recipes are going to clump the blood cells together and gum it together and reduce oxygen in the brain by 30%. That reduces oxygen to male organs, so less intimate function. It reduces oxygen to the heart. I mean, this is a problem, and it's the #1 cause of high blood pressure. Excess oils, anything above 20 to 30 grams of fat a day, will gum up the blood. The average American consumes more fat now than sugar ever. And all these people are blaming sugar. Sugar's not good. I agree. But the amount of oil in the American diet in the Western world has gone up dramatically. In every food, everything's fried. Everything's oil in the salad dressing, oil in the beans, oil in the, I mean, name it. It's everywhere. And by the time you add it all up, you've taken in over 100 grams of oil. You should be having 100 grams of fiber, not 100 grams of oil. And that 100 grams of oil, when you look under the microscope, you see what's called rouleau, which is French for stack of coins. And the little blood cells have squeezed through the capillary beds one by one because they're so small, 9 microns, the capillary bed's 7 microns. So they bend backwards to squeeze through and exchange oxygen, carbon dioxide. But if there's 3 or 4 cells stuck together, when they come to the brain, the blood pressure goes up because the heart's trying to pump the blood to get through the sludge. When you draw blood on a patient, it looks yellow. When you draw blood on me, it looks black red. You won't see fat in my blood. I have a little bit of circulating fat because you all have a little bit of fat circulating, triglycerides 45 to 70, 80. But when it gets over 400, which happens after everyone's meal. So there's this classic thing where I drink oil after eating my healthy food. And then you see me checking my blood every hour and showing it up on the microscope. By the 6th hour, I'm testing diabetic because the oil desensitizes your insulin. And my oil levels are so high, my triglycerides go up. And then you see me pass out during the video. Because there's so much less oxygen in the brain. Most people, instead of passing out, what do they do after lunchtime? They drink coffee. They need a stimulant to get through. Now they wreck their adrenals. Their adrenal glands can't produce enough cortisol. Now they become an adrenaline junkie. And without coffee, they can't function. I never drink coffee, ever. Sorry, Dave Bulletproof. I don't drink it. It's a drug. If I want to, driving home late at night and I got to stay awake, that'll probably be my go-to drug. But I created a product called Power and Speed. It's a capsule, lasts for 12 hours. And I break it open and put it in watermelon juice and sip it. So I can control how much guarana, which is from the rainforest, Arizona, Amazon, and it gives me a little bit. And what it does is it's delaying adenosine, which is a nucleotide. And so it interferes with sleep so badly. And so many people have chronic sleep disorders that even 1 cup of coffee a day is going to destroy a person who can't metabolize caffeine. And I'm one of them. Now, some people I know, I have a few gals I date, they can drink espresso up to bedtime and go to sleep. But that doesn't mean, and maybe they metabolize it as easier, but it's like some people metabolize cocaine or morphine or heroin better than others.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, well, and of course, you're an expert in the dark field microscopy for the blood, and I've seen you in action actually analyzing my own blood at the A4M medical conference, anti-aging conference. So it was really interesting to hear your assessment of how excessive oils can affect our blood. So that's relatively new, I guess, for a lot of listeners. So yeah, I appreciate that interesting impact. Although I understand that you're still a proponent of natural nuts and flax seeds and avocado, as you said. So it just coconut. So it's
so long as the fiber's intact.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I like that. As long as the fiber's intact. So that's the key. Well, that's really interesting. So it was very enlightening, Dr. Delgado, how our listeners can find you. So I know you have some interesting seminars, webinars, programs continuously going on. So you're such a prolific speaker, and obviously you love educating people. So you're one of the awarded best speakers of the International Anti-Aging Congresses. And what I read about you. So yes, very impressive. But how can people find you? What's the easiest way?
Yeah, so people can find me just by going to my website and the functional medicine website, where they can access and locate all the products that I formulate. Over 30 different products, is called DelgadoProtocol.com. Delgado, DELGADO protocol, PROTOCOL.com. I have a special link though for your audience. If they go to nickdelgado.com/link, it'll give them access to over $1,000 worth of free downloadable courses and books and events. And then as they learn more, they basically can access. So people are calling our phones right now. It's kind of fun because people find out about us. And, I've been in this industry for 45 years. So the goal is to kind of live a longer, better quality life, but live it with joy and happiness and be well, not end your last years in a senior care center or a hospital. True story. My mom's virtually she's turning 90 this year, and she works probably a good 50 hours a week. And, she really has a purpose in life and wants to help the people who call in, and she usually will handle the phone calls after 2 p.m. though. She starts early in the morning, so she stops. The point is that she recently had a fall, and they put her in the hospital, and the lady next to her had the most god-awful pneumonia cough you've ever heard. And my mom picked up something of that nature, and my mom's never been sick like that. She's gotten stuff and gets over it quick, but it lingered for a long time. And when Dr. David Steenblock once said, your immune system is everything, but as you get older, your immune system declines by nearly 6,000%. So if you're exposed to some really nasty microbes microbes and bad living conditions. Because people living in senior care centers and hospitals eat bacon and eggs and cheese and butter. They're overweight. Their immune system's shot. They're not on bioidentical hormones. They're really challenged with overuse of antibiotics. Every known chemical is used in these. They're on 20 different medications, blood pressure medications. I mean, on and on and on. And they all were really originally, all the medications should have been short-term use to solve maybe an emergency situation, not
Exactly.
for decades.
Right.
And so you and I agree that we need to go to functional medicine, bioidentical herbs and hormones and supplements and exercise and outdoor daylight and love and connection and detoxification. I use infrared spa and I use a Jing orb to energize my body. I use altitude conditioning. So in my book, which is now available on Amazon, they can find stopagingnowbook.com. And I go through what I call the 7 secrets to look and feel great forever. And I lay it exactly out very clearly. Some people like to read. I'm preparing to do the Audible book of that soon. And so, I think that the fun thing about it is I just wrote a chapter for a book that's coming out in Asia, and 38 different professors and medical doctors, famous doctors, have contributed to that book. And I spent maybe a good 2 months writing that 8 pages that contribute to that chapter. And I was really proud of it, so much so that I'm submitting it as an abstract to speak in Las Vegas at the coming A4M. And cross our fingers, I'll be one of the speakers, because 10 years ago, I used to be the main trainer for all the doctors around the world. And so, these young doctors coming up have yet to hear Dr. Nick. And when they do,
Well, we'll look forward to that. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. It's really amazing. I know you have so much information that definitely we might need to invite you next time, so to go into some other topics. So yeah, I appreciate your knowledge, your zest for life, you being an example for all of us. And good to see you.
Thank you. Your show is amazing, and you're doing incredible work and introducing people to concepts that maybe their own doctor would never have shared with them. And I just think people need to have that choice, that opportunity, right? And that's where it begins. Irina, it's a pleasure. Your show is amazing, and thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you for joining us at Curious Remedies and Beyond, exploring science and the wisdom of health and healing. We hope to see you next time.